Welcome back to another episode of Harmonious at Lunch, the show that fuels your business success. I'm Brandon Gano, your host and guide through the world of harmonious business growth. Today, we're unlocking powerful strategies with industry experts to help your business thrive. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or executive, you are in the right place. Join me and our incredible guests today on the journey to clarity, growth, and success. It is time to revolutionize your approach to business. Let's dive in with another episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Welcome back into some more bite-sized business advice. In today's episode, we're talking about selling the way your customers want to buy. It sounds kind of obvious, but are you doing it? I don't know. We're going to find out. We're going to peel back the curtain. I have a very special guest with me, Christian Zhivago. Welcome to the show, and thank you for being here.
Thanks. My pleasure.
So when we talk about this topic of selling the way your customers want to buy, I think they want to buy for free, but I don't think that's what we're talking about here. Can you explain what you mean by selling the way your customers want to buy?
Well, what's interesting about what you just said is one of the questions I ask when I interview customers is, what do you think is a fair price for this product or service? Or do you think their prices are fair? And they always come back. If I use the F-A-I-R word, they always have an answer that includes a profit margin. So interesting. So the basic premise.
You said that was from the customer's perspective, right?
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah. The basic premise is, and you talked before we got online here, you talked about entrepreneurs overworked, CEOs having not enough hours in the day. And what I'm recommending will reduce the amount of time you spend literally arguing about things you should do in your marketing. And what I do answers a lot of questions that cuts back unnecessary discussions about your customer and what the message should be and what they care about and all that. So basically what I've been doing for years as a revenue coach, and before that as a tech agency, and now as the founder of a digital company, digital marketing agency, is before I ever start actually producing anything for a client, I interview people who have already bought from them and who are happy with the purchase. So what we're doing is we're reverse engineering a successful sale so we can create new sales in quantity. And I ask open-ended questions that I've worked out for hundreds of companies and thousands of interviews, and they're all in my book. In chapter 3, they all are there. And the book is Roadmap to Revenue: How to Sell the Way Your Customers Want to Buy. I get them on a Zoom audio call. It used to be the telephone, but that's changed. And I tell them up front that it's anonymous, that can't type as fast as they can talk. I'm going to record it, but I'm going to anonymize the report. And then they speak freely. And I ask them these open-ended questions. How do you feel about the product and service? What do you think of competitors? Who else did you look at? What would you type into Google if you were looking for this again, or any search engine, AI now? And one of the questions I ask is, if you were the CEO of this company tomorrow, what's the first thing you would focus on or fix? And I get really interesting answers to that. This goes back to my theory about branding, which is branding is the promise that you make. Your brand is the promise that you keep. And you have 5 tools for doing that: your products and services, your people, your processes, your policies, and your passion. Most of the time, those things are pretty good, except for processes. That's where I've found most companies fall down, and they don't keep the promise that they make. So this narrows it down. Your brand promise is basically, they're real good at this, but they're not so good at that. So that's your strength and your weakness. And the reason this cuts out all the arguments is everybody gets on the same page after they've read these transcriptions and then a summary and recommendations report. And you don't have the finance guy saying, well, that's not what we did at our last company, or the HR person saying something, in the marketing people trying to get everybody on the same page. You just have a truth. This is why they bought from us. This is what they were looking for. And I talk about their customer mindset when they set out to buy, which is their desires, their concerns, and their questions. And if you answer those, if you address those things, for example, on your website, right away, as soon as they show up, they'll recognize themselves. They'll say, oh, yeah, they know what my problem is and what I am concerned about. And then you answer their questions. If you do those things, you're going to increase your revenue. No question about it.
This is fascinating. Because I used the perfect word when you started talking there. You cut out the arguments, and I've seen it so many times with companies I've been part of, companies I've consulted for, and who have hired us to do the operations work, and we spend so much time arguing over what we think the customers will like. Well, duh, just go ask them. It's not that complicated, but it's always like the very last option that we choose from, right? Well, should we just ask people? No, there's probably a better way. But I'm curious, when you're doing this, do you think it would be effective if the actual company was going to the customers, or is it actually more impactful because you're a third party service? So you kind of reduce that barrier of maybe potentially offending somebody or having feelings hurt. Where do you see that play out?
Well, I've given away all the secrets in my book, everything I learned, all the lessons and how to do this. And I did that because I wish everybody would do this, because it would make buying things so much easier and so many people would make so much more money. It's just a wonderful thing. So I'm okay with someone from inside the company doing it. The issue is not what you think, probably, and it is that people are more polite when they're talking to the person that they're talking about. And
Yeah.
you see this all the time. I mean, you see it on social where people are blasting someone, and then if you were face to face with them, it would be a completely different conversation. So they actually hold back. And I've had situations where I've called somebody who the machine that they bought from my client was broken and their whole business depended on that machine, and they were using the F word. And I mean, they were just terribly upset. So in that one case, I told them, listen, I want you to talk to the CEO and tell them in your own words. I got them on the phone together, and the guy was so polite. He was so nice. And I thought, this isn't how you get the truth. So it has to be someone that knows your business well enough to have a good conversation. And in my world, I mean, I've been in tech for decades and I understand things. Okay. So when I'm interviewing an engineer, that I don't have to say, what is that, every 2 minutes. I might say it once or twice in the interview, but basically they understand that I understand. And you want somebody who's somehow affiliated with your company, but understands what they understand, so that you have a meaningful conversation. And it is a conversation. Forget surveys. They don't work. That's your thoughts being put into multiple choice. And a lot of times it doesn't include the very thing that they're concerned about. So that's a mess. And focus groups are a mess. And I explain all this in the book. But this one-on-one, personal, open-ended conversation, you can ask additional questions. They can bring up things that you haven't even thought of. I've had that happen many times. And I just should add, the amazing thing about this is you can talk to 5 to 7 people of a given type. Like, let's say you sell something in the medical industry and you want to talk to patients, nurses, and doctors, let's say. You can talk to a little bit fewer of those if you need to get a total of 15 people or something. But you will find that they say the exact same things. They use the exact same words to explain their concepts or whatever, the answer, even though they've never talked to each other. So you actually get bankable information, and it's just a big aha. I mean, I've done this with copywriters who for the first time interviewed the people they're writing to. And I passed a guy who was doing a marketing and sales turnaround for Dow Jones, and I walked past this copywriter, and he was in his cubicle, and he was sitting back, and he was just going, and I was like, what's the matter, Robert? And he said, I just talked to this guy, John Smith. Now I know what he cares about. Now I can write to him, which is also, by the way, the problem with AI. They can stalk your customers for you, but they don't have that human connection. They can't intuit and infer. So we're not quite there yet with AI, and I don't know if we ever will be. I'm watching it like a hawk. I'm embedded in it. I understand it, but I'm not there yet on the copywriting.
Yeah, that might cross the lines of The Matrix or the movie iRobot. I don't know if I want to go there, but that's my feelings. That's my personal feelings on it. But okay. So you brought up something interesting that I was thinking about, because I would assume a lot of people would push back and say, well, I don't have time to go interview 6,000 customers or however many customers I have, one-on-one, of course. But you said a very small number. You said 5 to 7 in a particular group. So what does that 5 to 7 look like? Are we taking our best customers? Are we taking, a couple from both ends of the spectrum, the people who spend a lot, the people who've only spent a little with us? How do you decide what 5 to 7 we actually talk to?
Yeah, and we build the clients. My clients and I build the list together. I mean, we talk about it. We decide which people are best, and part of it is what kind of business do we want more of?
Yeah.
So maybe 3,000 people bought this product, but we're introducing a new one, and 150 people bought that one. We want to focus on them. Okay. So it's completely different for every company, but we don't have any problems. I'm again reverse engineering a successful sale or a desired sale. So you go after those people, and everybody who owns a company knows who those people are. And if they are people who have been with you for a long time and they have lots to say, great, let's talk to them. That's the secret of this, is you go after what you want.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hate to say this, but it sounds so simple. Why don't we do it? There's my question. That's a really good question. Why don't we do this? Why don't people just do this on their own? Or
Ego.
ego?
I
Okay,
know what
enough
my
said.
customers are. And I've even had CEOs say to me, I've said this many times, but I've had CEOs say to me, I don't need to do this because my salespeople talk to customers all the time. So I just say, okay, when was the last time you told a salesperson what you were really thinking while they were selling to you? And then the CEO goes, oh, okay. None of us, we were playing poker, we're negotiating. The guy might say something that makes you go, I would never do business with that company. Do you tell him? No, because he's just going to try to overcome your objection, okay? Which is really a terrible thing to say, because all of us have objections, but they're just questions. They're just desires. They're things that we want. And if we can't get it, or they're doing something that we really don't like. I remember my husband and I were interviewing an interior decorator once. She spent the whole time talking, gossiping about her clients and their divorces. And we didn't, my husband and I were so in tune with each other. We didn't even have to look at each other. And we knew we were walking out of there and never going to hire that person. I mean, and they didn't even realize that. Salespeople will sometimes come in and complain about their managers and not realizing that that's unselling you. So we don't tell salespeople what we're thinking, but after we buy, now we've got a vested interest in the company's success. So we want to be helpful. And interestingly, I'm asking questions that are easy to answer. Why were you looking for this? And everybody knows why they went after it and the problem they were trying to solve and why they bought. This one had this specific thing that I really needed. So that's why I bought. And that should be at the top of your website, not buried somewhere on page, the about page or something.
Yeah.
It teaches you to prioritize your messages, which is what most of the arguments are about. It's not just how we say it, it's what we say. And it's usually, for most companies, it's about 70% incorrect.
Wow, that's a big number. I'm curious in that example, though, with the interior designer. I don't know if you would be an ideal fit for that company. Let's say you were. Do you ever approach customers who did not buy, whose salespeople said, actually, Kristen would have been a great fit for our company. I'm not sure why she said no. Or is that juice not worth the squeeze? You only focus on the people that did buy.
I've done that in all these interviews I've done. I've also talked to more people than I suggested. Siemens once hired me and they wanted me to talk to 40 tech people. And I was like, what a waste of money. I mean, I shouldn't do that for you. They insisted. So, okay, fine. So by the 10th conversation, it was perfectly obvious what the issues were, why they bought and all that. So I started giving them their money's worth by finishing the whole interview at the very end saying, a couple of other people have mentioned X. What's your thought on that? And I got additional information out of them, but honestly, the work had been done with the 5 to 7 people. So what was your question again? I have to go back to that.
It was, do you ever talk to the people who said no,
Yes.
who a company or salesperson could have identified as potentially a good fit?
Yeah. Sorry. I have, and it didn't teach me anything that was usable. Because again, you want to duplicate the successful sales. And here's the interesting thing. People who have bought will say to you, well, I almost didn't buy because of X. But, just think about it. When you look at Amazon reviews, there might be 100 people and 10 of them say 1 star, no way, Jose. And maybe it's because it was damaged or whatever, but it's something that doesn't matter to you that much. And you're willing to go ahead and make the order because you think, it's not going to happen to me, or I don't care about that particular function. So you want to say, who are the people that overcame any negative, but you still hear about the negative? They'll still say, your salesperson really blew it because when I did this and asked that, he danced around it. He didn't tell me. I keep saying he, but there's a lot of female salespeople, including me. I'm a recovering salesperson, I always say. But the nut of it is you are finding out everything you need to find out to be able to sell successfully to people like that.
Yeah, it reminds me, I heard, actually my brother's in law enforcement and he echoed this, that it is true when you're trained to, find whether it's drugs or fake currency or anything, they only train you on the real stuff. So they only show you real currency, real drugs, so that when you spot something that is fake, it just feels wrong, but you can't pinpoint why it's wrong. So it's not exactly the overlap, but it's the same principle, right? You want to find out what people, you want to duplicate the things that made people buy, and then the other stuff will naturally fade away. So I hear what you're saying. That's great advice. And there's a whole lot more to cover, I assume, because figuring out why people buy is one thing. Duplicating that and making it a process to move forward with is an entirely different phase that we did not cover. You said all of these questions can be found in your book. Can all of that information be found in your book too? Do you help us build this process out to duplicate it?
Yes, in the sense that I believe there are 4 types of products and services in the world based on the amount of scrutiny that the person applies to the purchase. So there's light scrutiny, cheap stuff, buy it, impulse purchase. There's medium scrutiny, heavy, and intense. Medium scrutiny is like clothing. You've got more questions. There might be somebody else involved. Heavy scrutiny is like in the consumer world, cars and houses. There's a contract, there's a salesperson. And intense is all that, but you get married. It's a relationship, which is what I sell because I get very involved in my client's business. So you really, you have to know how people buy those types of products and what the questions are. And so in the book, and I definitely recommend the hardcover because it's all in these columns and it's easier to absorb. You see, here are their questions. Here's how to answer them. Here are some of the ways to do that. And honestly, I wrote this book in 2011, but I've been in the tech business so long, I knew how to write it so it would still be relevant now. And it still is. It shocks me. We did an audio version and I basically relived the book. And it's right on target. Obviously, AI is this big tsunami that's coming through and changing everything. So, yes, there's different things. But the way people buy certain types of products and services, believe it or not, except for some channels like where you promote them and so on, doesn't change that much. The essence of the buying process doesn't change that much. And so you're basically good. I mean, you can do this every 6 months or every year, and even in fast moving markets, you'll be okay, unless you're blindsided by a competitor or there's a technology shift. But that's coming, or you see it coming. People are seldom actually blindsided by those things.
Yeah, no, that's a great principle too. I love the word you use, essence. We talk about that all the time. Is you're still selling to a human being, so AI is not buying products for you yet. I don't know if
Not
that's
yet.
gonna happen. It's gonna be weird if that
Not yet.
happens. But anyway, if pack of underwear shows up at my door. Oh, my AI robot bought it. Cool, thanks for that. I'm not ready for that yet, Kristen.
I like that. That's great.
But no, this is fantastic. I wish we could dive into the rest of your wisdom here, because this is so important for people. But you have a book, and that's exactly what I hope people do: is go buy the book. Where can people find the book and learn more about you?
If they Googled Kristen Zhivago, there's pages and pages because I've been writing for years. ZhivagoPartners.com is our digital agency. And obviously we do this research and then we apply it and get their revenue going the right direction. The book is only on Amazon. I just decided a long time ago, that's the one. So there it is. And you just have to type in Roadmap to Revenue and you'll find it, or my name.
Perfect. Well, I'll be sure to go look that up and make sure we have the appropriate link in the show notes down below. Zhivago Partners, the book, Kristen's social media, everything, wherever you're watching or listening, is down below in the show notes and description. So please go check that out. I really encourage you to. If you want to grow your business, if you want to sell the right way to your customers, this has been a phenomenal episode. So Kristen, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it.
For those of you watching, listening, wherever you are, I want to make sure you come back too. So hit the subscribe button. And we put out episodes 5 days a week because we're a little bit crazy, but mostly because we want to help you build a harmonious business and life. I hope we did that today. We'll see you back on tomorrow's episode of Harmonious at Lunch.